And we're live on YouTube. Eric, how are you?
I am very well, Susan. How are you doing?
I'm really excited because I think what I'm hoping you'll tell us about today is something about how the human eye can give evidence to the fact that the particles and waves that you talk about as traveling together through space or space-time. I'm not a physicist or cosmologist, so forgive my language, but how does the human eye kind of help support your theory?
Well, I'd be very happy to tell you that because I spent a lot of time figuring out, is there anything that is naturally occurring in the universe that everybody can understand and that can prove beyond any reasonable doubt that the particle and the wave coexist, must coexist, and in fact do coexist. And in order to do that, we need to spend a few minutes talking about the eye, because the eye, to the best of my knowledge, and I've researched this question very carefully, is absolutely unique in one very important characteristics. There is an underlying mechanism for everything that happens in the cosmos. But the eye utilizes two totally independent underlying mechanisms, does so concurrently, creates two distinct images by totally different processes and combines these images to give us the final image that goes to the brain. Now, we know this is true. There is no question about this. And the uniqueness about the eye is that the radiation that comes into the eye is focused on a layer within the back of the eye called the retina. Now, the retina is an absolutely unique structure which biology has created and the humankind has never even thought of creating, and I'm not sure could create if it tried today. But it is, in fact, a combination of two things. It is a combination of pixels, very similar and exactly the same size as the pixels in your digital camera, and it creates a photographic image using the pixels. But it also interspersed with these pixels, which are called rods, there is another broader structure called cones. And the cones actually look somewhat like omnidirectional antennas. And in fact, they are antennas, although nobody in cosmology has recognized it so far. And what is happening is that the retina surface is shared about equally by rods and cones. The rods are creating a photographic image, while concurrently the cones are creating what is basically a television image, but it is doing it not on a television screen, but an array of tiny antennas, about 2 million of them. Well, about 6 million pixels are creating a photographic image, and they're creating it over the same space and concurrently. There are two images being created. This is beyond all question. Every retinologist or ophthalmologist know this. What they don't know is how is that second image created? because to the best of my knowledge, nobody has ever fixated on the question that it has to be a equivalent of a television image. There are only two known ways of creating an image, for heaven's sake, and we know that. You can create an image with a camera, or you can create an image by passing a signal through the ether and going to an antenna. There are no other ways of creating images. So if two independent images are being created, how in heaven's name could be created unless they are being done concurrently? Now, if that is the case, then the theory that light is a particle that moves through the space, and in moving, the reaction to space propelling the particle creates an electromagnetic wave that travels through the air at exactly the same speed as the particle does. And when they hit the eye, it will create an impact. If it happens to land on the cone, it will add to the energy on that cone, which will make that pixel more intense. If it happens to land on a if it lands on a pixel, if it lands on a cone, the vibration, the electromagnetic vibration will cause the antenna to respond, and it will create part of a television image. That is the only possible way in which two images can be created, and it can be only so-called created if within the eye, the propulsion of the particle also generates the reaction, which is a electromagnetic vibration, and these two things of the same origin create the two types of images. And that is why, while each of the two images separately is not particularly good, the combination of the two images is incredible. Now, how the retina takes two rather poor images and creates out of it one magnificent image is beyond my comprehension, and I suspect it's beyond everybody else's comprehension. The only thing I can tell you is we humans have discovered television and photography within the last century. Biology has developed the eye over millions of years ago and has had a lot of time in which to develop signal processing. Now, if we can figure out how the eye does this incredible job of signal processing and duplicated it, I think we will have made the electrical engineering part of it much simpler, and there's a lot to be learned from that. But we're getting into a completely different topic, one that
Yes.
fascinates me, but it's outside of the scope of this book. But
Let me
the
just
eye serves the same purpose in proving that duality is absolutely incorrect the way it's been taught. It is a duality, but it's a duality of simultaneity. There are two images being created by
so
independent underlying mechanisms, and it is a combination of the two images that we see. Now,
yes.
it
So
takes a lot more to describe this in the absolute detail, but in a nutshell, that is what's happening.
so let me just follow up. I love the phrase a duality of simultaneity. There is something brilliant about that phrase. I'm going to need to roll it around a little bit. I want to make sure I understand the waves are being received by the cones and the pulses
Rods.
are being, the pulses are being, the particles are being received by the rods, and that's the equivalent of the pixels. Is that right?
Correct. In
Okay.
fact, the rods in the eye are precisely the same size as the pixels in a digital camera.
Oh,
Precisely the same. The cones are roughly 1,000,000 times smaller than the antennas we're used to. But there is no reason to believe that antennas will only exist at the meter range, as we
yes.
do but in radio and television. They can exist on a smaller range, and I will also, as I also show in the book, they exist on a much larger range. So the we have to broaden our outlook on things and not get caught up in the fact that because we only know of antennas in dealing with radio or television, that's the only size that works. It isn't. It
Ah,
works at 1,000,000 times smaller scale. And
that's
as I say, we
wonderful.
can also show independently, not today, but it also works on 1,000,000 times larger scale. So
That's
it
great.
is a phenomenon that is not limited. And if the numbers blow your mind, that is correct. It blew my mind too, but I believe it is absolutely correct, and it absolutely proves the conjecture. It is equivalent to the experiment that proved that the general theory of relativity and not Newton's theory of relativity is the correct one. Except we didn't have to set up an experiment. The human eye has been doing this for billions of years. We just have to understand how it does it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, I look forward to next time.
Okay, we're going to have to find a different topic, though. I think